So what shall we talk about today?
Well, I mentioned talking about the election, and you
Mm,
said no way.
right,
So I think that's what we should talk about.
the election.
Well, no, not the election, but okay, here's what I'm curious about.
Hmm.
You host these dialogue spaces where the idea is to sort of tap into the group field and well, this is my idea of it. Tell me this is correct.
Mhm.
And to sort of recognize every engagement and interaction as an expression of wisdom and also trust one's own voice as an expression of that, sort of especially if you're identifying as the whole space itself.
Mhm.
Does that sound somewhat
That
accurate?
sounds pretty accurate.
So I'm curious if one can do that with a system as large as a country.
Mhm.
That's just another collection. Let me just ask really quick. The window's open. Is that like a disturbing noise coming in? Okay. Okay, great. Um,
We know the trash trucks are functioning.
yes.
Election or no
Yeah,
election,
so far society is
in this
still
area, the
working.
trash trucks are coming and taking our
Yes.
debris away.
Yes,
So yeah,
that
we're
is very
impacting
good.
the environment.
It's funny, I was actually in Athens when that wasn't working,
Oh, that was piled up.
and just trash was
Mhm.
piled everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, that is a blessing.
Mhm.
So anyways, yeah, I just have a curiosity about tapping into really large fields.
Mhm.
And then and then I guess even more than tapping into them, is it possible to impact them, change them, have some kind of alchemical,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, so first of all, where does that large system actually exist? That's the first question, right?
yeah.
So, and once we address that, we can see how to impact that.
Hmm.
So, where in your view does a large system exist? Is it material, like the trash truck picking up the trash? Is it a structural condition like that? Is it a belief system? Is it a psychic structure?
I think maybe it's all of those, but I
Hmm.
think the one I'm interested in is the psychic structure
Hmm.
right now, because
Hmm.
that's the one fomenting and
Yeah. So,
yeah,
so this election then, as a psychic structure, is about fear. It's a structure. This is exactly what we've been talking about. It's a
fear, power.
Yeah. There's a resistance to the movement of integration, and you don't have to have a political persuasion to see that the entire conversation is about fear. Which side is more can generate more fear in their population
Hmm.
to go out and cast a ballot.
Hmm.
So the structure is fear. And then your question is, how do you impact that? Well, how does that impact you, first of all? Like, where are you in relation to that fear?
Hmm.
So it depending on, you were just talking about some friends who think, well, the Democrats are going to like steal the election with their legal process, right? So they're afraid of that. And maybe somebody else is afraid that Trump and his guys are going to do the same thing, right? So everybody's afraid. How do what do you do with that fear? I mean, first you have to see how it's registering your system.
Hmm.
Like, where does that actually show up? And how does it express itself?
Yeah, my system doesn't seem to feel much fear
Okay.
personally,
Okay.
but I can tap into, okay, I can tap into something else, which I guess is in my system because I feel it in my belly as just a like real unrest,
Mm-hmm.
real agitation, unsettledness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I guess I feel that in my own body.
Yeah, but do you feel that as a negative thing? Like, as this is something that you don't want, that there's a aversion to that?
Hmm.
Because like take that in terms of like any change that you've ever experienced in your life and
Mm-hmm.
any level of your
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing comes up, which is, I don't like this. I don't
Yeah.
want this, right?
Yeah. Well, so yes, there is that level where I feel like I don't like it. And
Mhm.
there is another level, and this feels like the more inquiry-esque level where I'm just paying attention to it and sensing it directly, and that
Mhm.
feels interesting.
Mhm.
There's even another thing I noticed the other day that is a little bit like when
You guys froze. Okay, I guess we'll wait for them to come back on. And we're still recording, so that's good. Okay, there's Lindsay. And soon we will have them back. Gotta love technology. Mhm. There they are. Great, you guys are
All
back.
right, we're back. We have no idea what happened there.
That's all
just
right. You know what? It's, I'm calling it sunspots.
great.
Right. Well, we were just talking about silence without words. So I
Or
guess we
thoughts without
Thought
thoughts
words.
without
without words.
thoughts
Yes,
without words.
yes.
Okay.
All right,
So I guess we had an experience of that.
So what was the last thing you heard?
Lindsay, you were about to start talking about after the this like kind of like this amorphous fear in the field, and then you were going to try to relate it to something more personal, I'm guessing.
I have no idea where I was.
All right, well, just pick up where you can.
You say something.
Oh, I say,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. I'm afraid I have no,
I have.
I'm not sure where you were going with it exactly,
Well, what do you
but
remember I was
well,
last
I don't
saying?
know. I mean, I don't
Uh,
remember that or much of anything else. So, but I think the nature of,
oh, I was talking about momentum.
okay,
I was talking about this feeling that, oh, of going limp, of sort of an animal when they know that
right,
they're going to be defeated,
right,
just kind of goes limp.
right.
Because I feel this quality in the field of a momentum that there's no longer any point in putting effort into stopping something
Mm-hmm,
that is moving forward.
mm-hmm,
So in that way, I almost don't feel fear. I just feel this kind of like,
mm-hmm,
wee, like here we go.
mm-hmm.
Like gotta just go with the Tao on this one. There's, yeah,
So can you connect that to male female energy in any way?
male female
Yeah.
energy.
Yeah. Because, well, if you animal kingdom, right?
Uh-huh.
You're about to be devoured. There's
Uh-huh.
the aggression, which we say is typically a conditioned male energy, and
Uh,
the aggressed upon as they're, like they're
hmm.
dying, they go, okay.
I wasn't
Or even
feeling
in
it like,
the mating ritual, right? The woman,
yeah,
animal, I'm talking about mammals now, not praying mantises, but,
right,
uh, you know, the female will sort of be irritated by the approach, but then eventually just capitulate.
right. Well, I think male animals as well will just stop fighting or play dead when
Right,
there's no
right.
point.
Well,
So I'm not feeling it so gendered
okay,
personally.
okay,
It feels more fundamental than
okay.
that.
So, but apply it to the election, then you're saying that the process itself this sort of battle of fear on fear.
Yeah, the sort of like quickening and intensifying
Mhm.
of deep division and like
Mhm.
severe distrust, and also this kind of AI machine that's just only gaining steam and
Mhm.
and acuity and increasing that
Right.
momentum of that disrest and distrust. It's only starting.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel so much like a male female thing as much as just like one creature against another creature that's just like got a running start, and you're like,
Yeah. So where does all that exist though? Again,
yeah,
like where does that exist? I mean,
in my psyche, I
my
guess.
neighbors
Yeah.
are pretty quiet people. They're not like banging on my door with pitchforks.
Yeah.
Like I'm not encountering that as an actual experience of my life. And it seems like every person that I engage in, I can find common ground.
Yeah.
The common ground is always there,
Yeah.
despite the, the flow of ideas and ideology, right? So, but we have this notion that there's this huge conflict going on,
Right.
this.
So maybe
So
that
where's
is
that?
just on the level of story. Maybe it's just in the realm of thought.
Mm-hmm.
It does seem to be like a collective myth that we're all telling, that like Armageddon's coming or Civil War's coming. Like every movie's got that. And,
Mm-hmm.
that seems to be like our collective identity.
Okay, but let's say it is coming, because if the psychic space is generating that as our kind of like common dream world, if you will,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
Like you said, the movies, the literature, all that is about the end of the world.
Yeah.
What is that actually? The aliens are coming, the world.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, this is all an indicator of a shift of consciousness.
It is.
And since
Yeah.
we can't know
Yeah.
what is in the unknown,
Right. We're
we
just
fill it.
inherently afraid.
Yeah,
It's
we're
like gotta be
afraid,
bad.
and
What's
then
on the
we
other
fill it with
side? Yeah.
creative ideas
Yeah.
that uh, can either go very idealistically, romantically spacious, like even the shift of consciousness is kind of in that category, like,
Yeah.
oh, it's going to be so beautiful,
Yeah.
or dark and and brooding of like, it's the end of all things that we know,
Yeah.
but that neither of those things are the unknown. And what is kind of fascinating to me, kind of what we were talking about, thought without words, is that space of the unknownness and just being in that without trying to fill it. And then the expression out of that, we can look back and say, oh, that's what it was, or that's what it became, but we can never really know what it's about to be. And that is, to me, is the shift of consciousness. It's not the result of that shift, but it's actually occupying a space, a dialogic space that is inherently in the unknown. We're not set up for that,
Yeah.
right? So,
And I wonder, it's almost like doing such a thing, staying in the unknown, staying dialogic,
mhm.
when the psychic structure is tugging particularly strongly, is maybe an even more potent orientation
Mhm.
to stay dialogic
Yeah,
in the face of that.
yeah, because that to me is what we talk about as the resistance to the erotic, right? So the unknown, the way we're using the word erotic, is this space of unknown or nothingness, not yet formed, not yet manifest, with the pressure of what we know, resisting that. And what we know then pressed up against that is the creative. So this is you look at this election thing, it is really immensely creative. I mean,
Oh my gosh,
the
so
shit that's being
creative.
like
Like,
spewed.
like
The
wh-
Russians are like going with their misinformation, and
right. And like
Trump's,
weather is being created. Like, what an amazing part of the
yeah,
story.
yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, who imagines
Yeah.
that the Democrats could control the hurricanes
Yes.
so that they
Right.
would only hit Republican locations,
Right.
and then
Like they haven't been able to successfully shoot Trump, but they can create hurricanes.
right. But even
Yeah.
the unsuccessful shooting of Trump is like
Just a
an
story.
amazing,
Yeah.
like that guy that just like climbs on a roof in front of all the security and then misses. Like like who, where does that storyline come from? It's
Yeah.
such a dramatic
Yeah.
turn. So the whole thing is amazingly creative in a way. If you look at it, you couldn't
Yes.
write
Yes.
a storyline like that. Only we collectively can write that. Now, what is it? What is it? What's the metaphor?
Well, I want to come back to that question, but I'm noticing that I think what I'm afraid of is my own psyche.
Mm,
Like I've noticed, like I think we just or we love a good story.
hmm.
And these and stories often, these all these movies coming out about Armageddon, end of
Yeah,
times and stuff like that, they're dramatic AF.
right.
And we seem to be creating that. And then I notice in my own psyche, like this aspect that's like, okay, I've lived in this extremely protected and peaceful country my
Mm,
entire life
mm,
that hasn't known war.
hmm.
And it's almost like a part of my psyche is curious
Hmm.
about everything that I'm not getting to taste that
Mm,
goes on in the rest of the world.
mm,
Like, what is it to have the drama of warfare or the
mm,
drama of dictatorship
mm,
or the drama? It's almost like part of me wants to descend.
hmm.
And I think that's some part of the collective psyche that's like almost feels guilty. Maybe I feel guilty to be in a country that's so untouched by the pain that
Mm,
seems to touch other people.
mm,
So
mm.
there's this kind of like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
so well, okay, so it's both the descent, but it's also the ascent of that which has been covered over, right? The unconscious, the part that's disregarded, the
Yeah.
part that like in America, the American story,
Yeah.
really is not accurate,
Yeah.
and it covers over, all the disadvantaged, all the homeless, the poor,
Yeah.
all that is just like down there somewhere.
Well,
So,
that's part of it. I'll add to that a friend of mine pointed this out, which I really appreciated, which is there's also this like driving quality to like liberal progressivism that's just changing culture so quickly.
mm,
Like, okay, now gender's thrown out the window.
mm,
Now, I don't know, so many things, language, bodies,
yeah,
sports,
yeah,
everything's like
yeah,
should just be changing so quickly. And there's like a faction of the collective psyche that's just like not on board yet, like it's going too fast.
right.
And instead of being integrative about that, it's like, the progressive liberals are just like, shut the fuck up, or instead shaming,
Yeah,
like you're a piece of shit for not being 100% on board. And that's no way to
yeah,
integrate.
yeah.
So then of course it's going to come out sideways, all the lack of
Hmm.
agreement.
Yeah, so
I
you
don't
could
know.
see that as a rebalancing of overstepping, really, and also like again, imagination.
Yeah.
Like the imagination of the progressive world is something that doesn't exist.
Right.
And so now it's applied,
It's not
it's
human enough.
right, it's pushed
Yeah.
onto my experience
Yeah.
as a template for how to behave. And of course, there's going to be resistance to that.
Yeah.
So, that conversation, I mean, I would say for myself, there's always been this very freewheeling inquiry into the nature of energy, of male, female, of eros. And that's starting to like get pushed back at me as um, not, what's the word, like not appropriate. I mean, we've talked about this in some of our past conversations, but
Mm.
like the range of inquiry is starting to be boxed into
Yeah.
a space because if you feel hurt by something I say, then I shouldn't say it.
Yeah.
So, and then if that hurt
Yeah.
aggregates, then there's
Yeah.
almost nothing left to say.
Right.
And
And
this is,
then all the things unsaid are like in a pressure
yeah,
cooker. They're
yeah,
like a volcano
yeah,
underground
right. And
that I
this,
think Trump is leading the charge for a lot
right,
of like,
right. So this is where the
yeah,
I mean, I hate to say this, but there's a certain universal intelligence
yeah.
in the grossness of Donald Trump because
Well, and
he's,
trusting all of it. Trump has one
because
element, but like all of it is,
whatever
yeah,
comes through his addled brain, it gets expelled through his mouth and then hits that progressive pushback. And that's where you see all the sparks in this thing, right?
yeah,
But actually, both of those things are not intelligent.
right.
They're not intelligent. So,
So then you get all the people that are seeing that and just are stepping out of voting and the democratic experiment altogether,
Mhm.
which creates a whole other level of fear in me.
Right.
Like, oh
Right.
shit, if
Well,
we take that like
yeah.
mooring out, like, yikes.
Well, there's a
Yeah.
question whether democracy is coming to its natural end, right? And this again goes back to the next culture network question of like, okay, what is it that we want to give expression to? If democracy is failing, as it appears to be doing, right? Because it's starting to unravel around the world, then what is it? What is it that actually it gives? What is it that actually comes forth? So autocracy is like the presumed replacement of democracy, but that's obviously proven to be uh, a failure as well. But you start to see the democratic forces, the progressives, begin to be autocratic. So then it's like all autocratic. Just pick your autocracy, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to have the people that tell you how to think and be, how to express yourself, the autocracy, or the people are like, hey, I'm going to get mine. I'm going to step on you, but I'm telling you I'm going to step on you. So at least I'm honest. I'm going to steal it. By the way, can I have your wallet?
Well,
While
I'm
we're
also
talking.
going to say you can't have abortions and you can't do
Yeah, yeah,
this or that. So there's still a lot of top down.
yeah. But I don't
Yeah.
actually believe that. I'm just saying that so I can get in power because I don't actually have any belief systems. I just want power.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, I just want power, And so it's autocracy and autocracy in a way. Now the
Mhm.
question is like, okay, do you not vote? Or are you a pragmatist and you vote in some way that is like the most benign version of those autocratic forces? So that's the
Yeah.
question, I think. And if you don't vote, then you're perceiving a kind of a deeper level and you're trusting that in a way, or you're in a deep cynicism.
Yeah.
I think mostly it's cynicism, not really
I
perception.
think so too. Because I think you can vote and still perceive the deeper
Right,
level.
right.
Um,
But
yeah.
you can say whatever the vote is, because I think part of the fear is like, oh, it's going to go in the way that I didn't want it to go, and then the world comes to an end, right? That's the basic storyline.
Right.
But to me, like whatever way the vote goes, we still have the same set of conditions.
Yes.
That's the reality of it,
Right.
and the same
Exactly. And that's
forces.
what I'm seeing. There's some momentum. There's
Yeah,
something occurring that
yeah. So
the election
whatever
is,
fear of
yeah.
the future is the fear now. So that comes back to, okay, what's that fear?
Yeah.
What is that fear,
Yeah.
and where do I perceive it, and what level of reality is that actually expressing? Is the actual universe a universe of destruction
And
and
disconnection and
disconnection?
yeah.
Like is that, and that
And
does,
evil and loss
yeah,
of heart and faith
yeah,
and,
right.
like,
And
yeah.
somehow I, in perceiving that dark universe, use fear as a way of setting up a protection. Like I'm going to protect myself from the universe. Good luck. I don't think so. So this is the insanity, if you will, of the human psychology. Is
Yeah.
like I think it's a dark universe, and I'm going to like have my go bag and my AK-47, like protect myself from the universe with like bullets and like 2 years worth of dried food. Like I don't think the universe gives a damn about that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If the universe wants to squash you, your gun and your dried food isn't going to stop the universe. So then, if it is a dark universe, what is that? And then, is it a dark universe actually? So this goes into to me the big psychic structures, the archetypes actually
Mm-hmm.
that we function that are mostly invisible. Maybe they show up in dream states or imagery
Mm-hmm.
or the unconscious sort of peeking out
Mm-hmm.
into the sort of the aware mind. But these are structures that we hold collectively. And
Yeah.
in a way, to me, the approach to that is in this dialogic space, because that's a space which is presumably bigger than, wider than any archetype. So the archetype, we could say, relative to the conscious mind, is bigger, wider, has more influence, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
The dialogic space, to me, is as big as it gets.
Okay, tell me more. What is the dialogic space?
Mhm.
I want to feel something bigger.
Yeah, it's thoughts without words, right? Isn't that the phrase of the morning?
That's what Alex mentioned right
Yeah.
before we jumped
So
on. Yeah,
it's
I
a
like
space,
it.
it's a space that includes the all the things we're talking about, includes the thoughts space, the archetype, the big space, the dark universe, the romanticized beautiful universe, all those things, right? It's contained in that, but it's larger than that.
So
It's
to
not
you,
localized.
dialogic space means like consciousness, but like a kind of
I think it
unfolding relational consciousness.
I think it contains consciousness.
Mhm.
So it's because there's consciousness, but there's like whatever the null state of whatever you can talk about is also that, right? So you have
Mhm.
consciousness and not unconsciousness, because unconsciousness is emergent into consciousness, but it's the exformation, if you will, the space around or amongst
Right, the
consciousness.
unknown, the thing
Well,
from
it's not
which the
unknown in the like, yeah, it's unknown. It's the unknown. It's the unknown. There you
okay,
go.
okay.
So it includes consciousness.
Hmm.
And maybe you could say that consciousness moves in the unknown, and that's the transformational space, right? The consciousness, and as it enters the unknown, reality occurs,
Hmm.
and that's what we know. And now we're starting to venture into, well, how do we move? Can we explore? Can we find form that expresses the unknown? And that's very paradoxical, by the way, because we're
Right.
saying, like, what is the form that expresses the formless? So you get into this sort of opposites in terms of language. This is where you get into words without thought,
Right.
thoughtless words, right? So,
Right. I just get the feeling of it, a very fully well-oiled ball bearing that can go in any direction. Like
mm,
there's no, it's absolutely available.
yeah. So that's a great image. So, and we try to make it linear because that's the way we think. We think, first one step, east, west, 1+1, that's a very linear
Hmm.
kind of world that we construct. But if the world is actually multidimensional and multidirectional, without time, without causation, without meaning, if you will, unconcerned with the sort of the expression or the outcome of anything at all. Now,
I think it's like concerned and unconcerned. It's paradoxical.
okay, great, great. So
It's
unconcerned,
cathected and uncathected.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that you say is quantum because it can become or be anything
Mm-hmm.
at all.
Mm-hmm.
But now apply it to the election. Like take that into the election and go, what's my relationship to my being dialogic space relationship to this phenomenology of like this fat old billionaire guy, like railing at the world, possibly demented, and then this, the Democratic, Kamala is there as kind of like the great hope of progressivism, except that she's kind of moved to the middle. So we're not quite sure if she's the real thing, and nobody really nominated her. And like, how did she get into this? So there's this, this very interesting passion play going on. And we've organized it as very dramatic, like existential, existential. Like if
Yes.
this one gets in, it's over.
Yeah. And if that one gets in, it's
Right,
over.
right,
Yeah.
right. So we've
Yeah.
empowered these individuals with this tremendous projection of power.
I don't even, just as an aside, like, how are they even handling this? Like, I was just thinking if I was Kamala, like the amount of energy and stress and being on, like, I just don't even know how I wouldn't like get a cold or something.
Uh,
Like, just wow.
I think
But
they have attending physicians that
my
keep
gosh,
them like probably well stocked with amphetamines
I
or
just
something. I don't know.
can't even.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's hard to know. I mean, there is a huge amount of structure around them to
support and
support.
prop and
Yeah, yeah. So that
Hmm.
passion play then is going on, but like the unconcerned, concerned, quantum universe, unknown. What is the, how does that, how do you in that space, that space of openness and unknowing, how to make contact now with that election from that unknowing space, and how does it show up in the system?
I mean, in some ways, I feel more charge. Like I just feel like the charge directly as charge
Mm-hmm.
in my system
Mm-hmm.
with less story.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd feel my gut.
Yeah.
Um,
But you asked about how to change the outcome. Could the outcome be changed, right? So here we are. We are the unconcerned universe,
well,
which could be concerned, right? It could make contact with phenomenology and become concerned. That is a possibility. So now,
it begs the question, what is the right outcome? You
yeah,
know?
okay,
And so then I go like, oh fuck, I didn't
yeah,
think that through
yeah,
because that is a very complicated question.
right. So
Um,
you're God, right? You're God, and you're going, okay, like who wins? I mean, to me, I find myself in a kind of like, I don't know.
yeah, no, I'm not so interested in who wins, but I do feel concern about this storm brewing.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just crackling electricity in the sky and the
Mm-hmm.
things are darkening, or so it seems, this kind of
Mm-hmm.
intensification of the drama.
Yeah.
So
Do you think that that's Russian disinformation?
it doesn't matter because
Okay.
it's just happening.
Yeah.
Like there's all kinds of elements that have created.
Yeah. But if I, every time I go onto my computer, there's messages about the unicorns that are coming, and they're going to be like running through all the houses and breaking all the windows and gobbling all the trees. The unicorns are coming. The unicorns are coming. It doesn't mean the unicorns are coming, right? So my fear of the unicorns, where does that reside actually? Where does it actually reside in your system?
Hmm.
Like, what is it that's actual in the whole conversation around the election?
I have no idea. You answer that. What's
Well, you just answered it. You have no idea. That's the fact.
yeah.
And so this is the unconcerned universe that has no idea. And then you go, okay, I'm God. How should this election go? And well, you can say, well, I'm a progressive God, so obviously Kamala should, I'm an autocrat. Like I think
Here's what my God.
maybe God is like an incel guy in like his basement, like playing video games and going, yeah, Donald Trump, yeah, you go, boy.
Oh my
Like
God.
we don't
No,
know.
I like the question. Like if I was God, what's
Yeah,
the and it has nothing to do with like who wins,
right.
but there is a longing for energy to move and not be stuck or to
Hmm.
like transform into
Right,
something more integrated.
right.
There does seem to be a longing for a directionality towards integration. Like my
Hmm.
heart really longs for that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the mysterious process of how that constitutes is far too complicated to know what are the right chess moves
Hmm.
to have that
Yeah,
occur.
yeah. But
Yeah.
the knowing then isn't, so this is like it's a multi-nodal knowing. It's not my knowing, it's our knowing, right? So the collective is the manifestation of that knowing. So if I'm God, I I have every single conscious point of knowing available to me, and some of those are like Trumpsters, and some of those are Kamalas, right?
Right.
And so the collective of that is going to give expression to something. So that's as God, that's what's happening. Do we need more than that? Like, what is God afraid of?
Mic drop.
Yeah,
Uh, what is God afraid
yeah.
of? Yeah, I don't think God's afraid of anything.
Okay, so
Yeah.
then, but the unfolding of human consciousness as an expression of that unknown, that's the exploration itself inherently.
Say that again.
The the way that we actually manifest is itself the exploration. It's not like it should be this way or it should be
Mm-hmm.
that way, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the what is it? And the what is it is what actually shows up and expresses. And then really it's like we don't even know what it is when it does show up. There has to be like a deep curiosity and a deep humility about the unknown and the unknowingness that we hold to even encounter what does manifest, to even see what it is. Because we bring our known, our prejudice, our conditioning, our tendencies, and we apply it to the manifestation. We go, oh, that was a bad outcome, or that's a good outcome.
For some reason, my mind is going to like, okay, the people who live in North Korea
Mm-hmm,
and like can't even do a podcast like this, like
mm-hmm,
looking at the nature of their government and like chewing on it or whatever.
mm-hmm,
And that seems to me is just like inherently bad. Like that is like not God-ish.
mm-hmm,
That is not some good process happening. That's
mm-hmm,
like some fetid,
mm-hmm,
ischemic, you know, unhealthy
mm-hmm,
thing.
mm-hmm.
And it could last like that for generations and generations and generations.
It has,
It
yeah.
has.
Mm-hmm,
And like that just sucketh. There is no goodness to that. There's no,
mm-hmm.
what do you think about
About
that?
North Korea?
Yeah, I
Never,
like
I've never been there, so I don't know.
so the fear is like that I could find myself in that corner
But
of
okay,
reality.
but where you find yourself is so in North Korea, I'm guessing, I'm just imagining this, not that I've ever been there, but that the condition of the individual life is invisible because there's no context. In the same way, you get up every day and you're concerned about whether you can survive financially because you live in America where nobody's taken care of. You either like strive or you die, basically, right? So that's invisible to us.
Strive
Like,
or die. I
yeah, the
like that.
pressure of the capitalist system
Mm-hmm.
on the individual and how it impacts us in terms of our anxiety of just surviving, where survival isn't like food and shelter. Survival is like getting ahead, whatever the hell that means.
Right.
And there's never ahead enough because there's always more, and there's always the threat of that whatever I got ahead taken away from me because, well, there's all the people coming in across the border, and there's people that are like trans people that are going to take it out. There's like, there's all that, and then there's the pressure of having to make money because nothing's provided. So now go back to North Korea where everything's provided, but you're basically getting starved and like worked like a slave, right? So I don't know, like
Give me capitalism.
yeah, capitalism, right. But I'm just saying, like, the condition in which you live is invisible to you because it's all background.
Mm-hmm.
And the phenomenology that is actually of concern, whether you're starving in North Korea or you're like eating, like you're obese in America, which is probably a better comparison, right? Like your junk food into obesity and heart
Yeah.
disease and all that is what's actually happening, like in that context that's invisible. Where am I? Where do
Right.
I exist?
And the truth is, I have like no data points for North Korea. I just
Mhm.
have the stories that have been told to me from my particular
Yeah,
point of view about how horrible it is,
yeah.
you know?
It probably is horrible. I mean, it sounds horrible,
Yeah.
but like capitalism is pretty horrible too, because like I'm doing fine, but I'm doing fine on the backs of other people who are not doing fine because they're not bright, they're not white, they're not privileged in some fashion.
Mm-hmm.
They're disabled, they're hurt, they're emotionally upside down.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't have the capacity to function at a high level. So they're like the slave labor
Mm-hmm.
that's basically put into capitalism needs to have an underclass. It needs to have unemployed. It needs to have people who are cheap labor for
Yeah.
it to work, right? Well, it's not that different from North Korea in that respect, but not
Yeah.
not the politics of it, but again, the phenomenology of it. Like I'm in the center of this thing. I don't wake up and go, oh, I'm in a capitalist society and I'm like having this anxiety about survival. I'm just in it.
Yeah.
I'm having that anxiety. My friends have that anxiety. We live in an anxious state. We're driving 2 hours to work, to like work in some cubicle, driving 2 hours back so we can pay the mortgage, so we can, that hamster wheel is going,
Yeah.
and there's a deep dissatisfaction with it. And then what's that dissatisfaction? And then we get back to fear. And then we go, oh, there's an election. I'm afraid. So fear, 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 and fear, right? So I think fear is the space that we have to investigate,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of whether we're in North Korea or here. What do you say?
Sounds good.
So shall we change the election? We can announce it here. It can be on record. What would you like the outcome of the election to be?
In this moment, I don't care. That wasn't even the initial
Mm.
fear. The fear for me is more this like underlying disrest that whoever wins is zero gonna touch it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what I'm getting from what you're saying is almost this orientation of like the only thing to do, if there's a doing at all, is to be like open and to be trusting in some way, or just sort of comport as God would, which is like,
Right. Right.
which is not to be factional,
Right.
but is to sort of marvel perhaps at the unfolding
Yeah.
with
Well,
some quality of like,
yeah, there's space around. Like,
yeah,
I took the trash to the curb, and the trash truck came and took trash, right? It didn't organize my reality. So the election comes, I vote. It doesn't reorganize my reality. So while all that's happening, the phenomenology is happening. Where I am actually is in this dialogic space, curious about what its expression is. We're seeing what an expression of individualism and self-centeredness is, and transactional relationship is, and survival orientation and fear. That's what we know what that is, right?
mm-hmm.
And the election is kind of a representation of that, so we can see it and we can see the result of that. But that's not where the action is, to me. The action is in the very space that we're exploring and its expression. So that's not an action so much as that it's a perception. And that's going to change the election. And that's my
Certainly.
prediction.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
You heard it here
You heard it
first.
here first. Yeah.
All right. Well, what's the result going to be?
The result is going to be the human condition.
Yeah.
That's what the result's going to be.
Yeah.
And the further exploration of how fear and separation can express a certain kind of condition, and how the dialogic space can express a kind of condition, and what that itself is a dialogue.
Can
Right?
we, this is kind of a side note,
Yeah.
but I think there should be a different word than dialogic because
Okay.
it has in it too.
Yeah, I know.
Could it be like metalogic?
Ooh, I think this is really a challenge, and we've been talking about this actually outside of this conversation, which is the restructuring of language
Yeah.
and the creation of new words and new
Yeah.
language. Metalogic?
Metalogic. Well,
I like that.
logic is sort of like the logos, and meta to me just has the largest space
Okay.
in it.
Okay.
But right now we're in a dialogic conversation,
right.
but we're sort of talking about a metalogic.
Hmm.
God is sort of a metalogic consciousness.
Yeah,
You
I like
know?
that. So I think dialogic sort of grew out of, the original form that I found myself in, which was like an insightful person talking to less insightful people
Mhm.
about important insights, right?
Right.
So that's sort of
Right.
kind of, you know, a spiritual teacher kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
When that began to break down, because there was emergent intelligence actually in the so-called students that they had to recognize and stop being students and cut out this foolishness,
Yeah.
then it became dialogic, right? But now the dialogic maybe is more diffuse even, and metalogic, we'll try it,
Yeah.
see if it catches.
It's more multifaceted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is indeed what I think we're beginning to encounter,
Yeah.
is that that intelligence moves about freely,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know, or let's say our apprehension of it moves about freely because
Mhm.
it's moving. I mean, we can presume it's doing its thing.
It's the whole kit and
God is
caboodle.
there.
Yeah.
I don't know if God's playing video games in the basement, or cares about an election or whether the trash gets picked up or not. But, you know, that we can say that the very definition of that space is it's everything.
Right.
It's everything.
Right.
So,
I've been hearing whispers, I don't even know from where, of like an idea that water is God, you know? So
okay.
even my point in that is just like even the elements
Hmm.
have to be included, like even non-human
Yeah.
consciousness, is a part
Yeah.
of the
Yeah.
metalogic
Yeah.
space.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have to work on the different forms, metalogical.
Metalogical.
Okay. We'll work on that.
Yeah.
We'll try to work that into like some of the languaging and see if it
Yeah.
catches. People have to start use, so it's got to be like a meme word. It's got to be picked up
Yeah.
and used.
Right.
Otherwise, it just becomes obscure, and then you have to constantly define it, and it
Yeah.
becomes sort of, arcane and, priestly. Like you and I know what that word means, but nobody
Right.
else
But it
does.
does, things can catch on.
Yeah.
I was thinking recently of a couple words that I was like, are so normal part of the lexicon that everyone owns. But if you listen to them, they
Mhm.
sound wonky,
Mhm.
or they sound just kind
Yeah.
of, but they've just people now have owned
Mhm.
them. So I
That
think
could
that
be
can
your
happen.
contribution, like create a glossary of a non-dual language.
Well, so far it's a glossary of one.
Okay, well, that's a
And
good start.
I do feel like the thing that you've been moving towards in the dialogue space, I don't know, is more metalogic.
Yeah.
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 It's almost like the orientation of dialoguing with a spiritual teacher. I think the word dialogic fits more
Mm-hmm.
because there's sort of like a single point
Mm-hmm.
of the interchange with wisdom.
Right.
But if that,
Right.
is
Right.
multidimensional,
Right.
then yeah,
Right.
it's different. Well, what
Okay.
time is it here?
I don't know. Seems like a good place to stop.